Good afternoon, and welcome to Lunch and Learn. My name is Barb Hemme, and today we will be covering AR Invoicing Shipments. The first thing you want to do on your accounts receivable shipments is you want to make sure that you review your company configuration. For example, on company configuration, there are several settings under the General Ledger accounts receivable that will impact what you see and what happens with your receivables as you invoice. Then under company maintenance, there is a whole segment on accounts receivable. You would want to double check your aging report format. You can choose several different ways to see your receivables come out. You would want to check your pay method maintenance. Some of you will only have a checking account and it will only be checks. Some of you will have electronic interfaces. Some of you may do wires that are separate from an electronic maintenance. Whatever way you pay payables and however you receive AR payments, you would want to put under the pay method maintenance. Usually, pay method is shared between AR and AP. Electronic interface maintenance. If you receive checks in the system to pay your receivables, or if you send out invoices to your customers, you would review your electronic interface maintenance. If you have a lockbox, you would want to set that up in this particular area. If you don't, just ignore it. For those of you who may not know what a lockbox is, the lockbox just means usually that a bank gets a PO box in your name and they collect the receivables and then they send them to you, send the check amounts to you and deposit them right into your account. You need to set up a bank account. You can have multiple bank accounts, as many as you do business with. You can have multiple bank locations as well that you can set up. You want to check your product group maintenance. This is extremely critical because product group maintenance will be referred to by the GL control codes, and you want to make sure that the product groups are all set up correctly. You need to set up your terms. Terms would be net 30, net 60. If you sell at a discount, you could put that in terms maintenance. You can have as many as you desire. It's easier for the salespeople to not come running to you to ask you for a new terms code. If you set up multiple ones, then they can just select in the drop-down box on the sales order. Recurring cycle maintenance. If you send out invoices on a recurring basis, for example, maybe you are renting out part of your building to someone else, so you are to receive the rents. You can actually set up an accounts receivable invoice on a recurring cycle basis, monthly, daily, annually. We went over that a little bit more last year when we talked about last week when we talked about recurring invoices. Miscellaneous charges. You will have miscellaneous charges on your invoices. Most of the time, they will be something like freight or possibly shipping and handling, something that doesn't come in automatically from the sales order. By filling out the miscellaneous charge area, you can put a code and then you put a GL control code right behind it so that the invoices will post correctly. And finally, you want to review your customers. Customer setup will impact you on the receivable side. You can set up multiple defaults, so by the time you get ready to invoice your shipments or your miscellaneous invoices, the information is just pulling in to your invoicing system. Accounts receivable shipping invoices are actually pretty easy to do once you get the hang of it. So the first thing that we need to do is go to accounts receivable and we want to enter a group, and I will use the term, unfortunately, batch. Same difference, group or batch. The system will say group. And all that is it gives us the opportunity to pull in shipments that have occurred on a certain date that we'd like to invoice. So using the actions menu, we're going to pull in the shipments. You can select these shipments if you'd like. You can be picky. You can say, today I only want to invoice customer XYZ and only pull in that shipment. You can pull them all in. If you delete a shipment from your invoicing batch, if you pull them all in, the shipment would still be available for the future. Next, after we pull in the shipments, we're going to review each invoice for accuracy. This is an extremely important step. It does happen automatically, but it's best practice to review each invoice and make sure that everything is coming in correctly. Now, if you're selling widgets and you send out 100 invoices a day or 1,000 invoices a day, obviously you're not going to want to take a look at every single invoice. What you would want to do then is you would want to take a look at the batch summary page and just review a few pages instead of pulling up each particular invoice. If you are a custom manufacturer, for example, then you may only send out a few invoices and the amounts may change depending on what happens with your sales order. In particular, we want to watch terms and prices. So the terms we set up on the customer level, occasionally you're going to want to change the terms. For example, if it's a down payment or an advance billing, we would want to make sure that that is not net 30 days, that we want it ahead of time. We may be invoicing to say it's COD. If it's COD, we'd want to print out the invoice, have it ready for the customer who has to pay when we deliver the product. So watch your terms and double check your prices. They should just come in from the sales order, but occasionally some people don't put prices in the sales order, so you don't want to post a zero invoice. Review that if you need to. You can also add comments if needed to any invoice in particular. You can add miscellaneous charges if they're needed. We talked about that in the setup. This is where you could add freight, for example. And if there's any advance billing for this order, make sure that they are correct. And last week we talked about advance billings, that they're line order specific, and you want to make sure that it pulls in on the final invoice so that the invoice is then zeroed out in your system. Next step before you post is review the edit list. It's your last chance to review the general ledger accounts to make sure that everything has been billed correctly, that you have the right customer. Make sure that there are no warnings in your batch. If you have a warning, it will in fact tell you that there is a problem. Okay, go back and before you post the batch, I forgot to put in here, might want to print your invoices, and or if you snail mail them, if you PDF them to your customers, make sure you get the PDFs out of the system. So once everything is the edit list is good, then print your batch of invoices, and then if everything still looks good, post the batch. Next, make sure all your batches are posted before your month end or year end. I've seen it where people put the batch in the system and they make sure everything is all good, and then they forget to post the batch in the right period, and then you have problems on the accounting side. So make sure that they're all posted and double check your review journal, because if you did miss anything, this will show up in your review journal and it'll appear to have posted, but it really hadn't posted. And then finally, if any changes were made to prices or quantities, the sales order must be manually updated with the correct information. So the sales order will talk to invoicing, but invoicing will not talk back to the sales order. So for example, let's say that you have something that you invoice where the price is changed at the time of shipment. So you pull in the shipment, it says a $0 amount, but you know that you have to charge $15 for that particular item. Go ahead and fix the invoice. You can finish posting, adjusting, whatever you need to do, but then go back and update the sales order so you have the history available to you at that time. So we're going to go in and I'm just going to show you a little bit of what we're talking about. So I'm in Kinetic. If you're in one of the older versions, you can play with it about the same way. Some of the things will be in different areas, but it will be close. So we, in fact, want to go to financial management, and we want to go to accounts receivable and general operations, and then we want to go into AR invoice entry. What we are going to do is we are going to put in a test batch, and we're going to hope that it works this week and that I stay stable. I've got an invoice date in here of 2/15/2024. If you notice, this defaults to today's date. I can change this date on my batch anytime that I choose. I can be billing for, a few days ago, a week or two ago. Just make sure that this invoice date is what you want to see on the invoices. You also can change your apply date. So you could, in theory, invoice it for in the future and then apply the date in the future. It's harder to go back, especially if your periods are closed. You wouldn't want to backdate your invoices. So all I'm going to do at this point, and I think everybody on here, I hope, knows that the apply date automatically defaults to the fiscal period and the fiscal year in the system. So I'm going to save this, and I want to actually pull in some invoices now, some shipments now. So on the right-hand top of my screen, where the big hand is, there are the three dots with the submenus on it. So I'm going to do get, and I can do shipments. You'll notice this if you did last week. If you participated, you'll notice that you also have deposit payments and recurring invoices down here. If you do contract billing, milestone billing, project billing, we aren't working on that in this particular session, and so we won't go over it. Maybe we'll do that in a future session if people are interested in doing that. So I'm going to say get my shipments, and up pops this particular screen. So right now I've selected all customers, and I'm going to leave it at that for the purposes of this demonstration, but I can just select, just like any other select box, I can use this icon and look for a specific customer. I can do, if I'm multi-site, I can do the current site, or I can do all sites. It just helps you define what you want to see. You can also say, do you want the sold to or the bill to customers? Most of the time, your sold to and bill to are going to be the same, but occasionally you're going to sell to one company and bill to another company. So this gives you the opportunity to call them up as well. So I can view all packing slips, manually select them, or I can even look at my drop ships differently. So I'm going to hit view all packing slips. And as you can see, I have some test invoices or packing slips that are ready to go. So all I need to do in order to select these invoices is it won't allow me to select all, which it should, but I can select all. It's telling me that these packing slips are not invoiced, so it won't pull anything that has been invoiced in. And I can click OK. It's going to ask me, am I sure? Even if I make a mistake, if I pull them in, I can still reverse out this invoice by deleting the invoice line. So for today, I'm going to say yes. It tells me 3 invoices were corrected. And now I've pulled these 3 invoices into my batch. They're all marked as shipment invoices. I could add other invoices into this batch. It's best practices to do a different batch, one for shipment entries, one for advanced billings, one for deposits. You can combine them, but again, best practices is just pull in one batch for each type. So now the invoices came in, and I actually put 3 different kinds of invoices out here for you to see how we can manipulate that. This first invoice we can take a look at, and it's just kind of a standard invoice. So remember, it pulled in from shipping. But last week we talked about advanced billings. And you can see here that because this invoice is based on this sales order, so the shipment was attached to the sales order came in automatically. So the advance bill came in automatically. And so it shows you that 26,050 was advanced bill. And so when I invoice this customer, I'm only going to see the balance that they owe. Now, the caveat here is if I advance billed it and they haven't paid it, they owe that invoice plus invoice for the total of the 28,000. So that's a matter of how you manage your receivables. You can see down here that it pulled in the lines from the sales order. And let's say, for example, that I wanted to change either the quantity or the unit price. I could do that at this particular point in time. It is my chance to fix what's broken. Also, I could fix this advanced billing. So let's say that I booked the advanced billing wrong, and it should all be on line 1. I could, in fact, change line 1 to 26,050, and I could eliminate the 1,050 and put everything on one line. So this is what I meant about reviewing your invoices. Make sure that everything is occurring the way that you want it to occur. And then I can actually print preview this invoice. And it can take a couple minutes depending on how well your print server works. Sometimes this works in our test environment, sometimes it doesn't. So I'm just going to get out of here and go back. The X here, you probably have the same issue. It's way up in the corner here, and it's really, really, really hard to find. So you might want to click on that. All right, so it didn't print up a print preview. That's okay. We don't need it to do that. And so now we can go back to our invoice detail, make sure everything is correct one last time, and then we should be able to go back to our group list, and you can see I use the arrow on the left. One of the most confusing things is when you use the arrow on the left and when you X out in the new versions of Kinetic. So let's go to the second shipment invoice. And here it's just a standard old $2,400 invoice. I can add now, if I wanted to, I can look and add a miscellaneous charge. And I think we have one on the next invoice. So I'm going to just add a charge to here. And you notice I've got some presets on the miscellaneous charges. They're used by both payables and receivables. So we just want to add freight, and it's an amount. We could do it as a percentage if we wanted to use that for our charges, and we're just going to put in a $25 charge, and we don't want this extra line here. So I'm going to delete the line, and I still have my freight charge on here. So now if I go back to my invoice and my invoice detail, so here's my $25 miscellaneous. So I can do a miscellaneous charge on the header. I can do it on the line. In the case where I was at, I did it on the line. And again, here we have our packing slip, our packing line. If there's a drop ship and you're invoicing now, it should come in here too from your pack line. Okay, the third thing we want to take a look at is this shipment here. And there's nothing fancy about this one at all, except that I think this one has a miscellaneous charge that we pulled in from the invoicing. So let's take a look at this. And notice here, it came in from the sales order. I didn't add it. So miscellaneous charges can come in from the sales order as well. Notice it's not shown up here. It's only shown when you go down to the lines. So we've reviewed all of those. We're going to see if we can get a group edit list up. You can pick which books that you want to use. I'm in the main book right now, so I'm going to select the main book. and I'm going to print preview. And if not, that's okay. You can practice on your own. It's just a report, like I said, that tells you exactly where everything is going and that it worked right. Okay, so now I actually have decided that everything in this batch is correct. And so now I want to submit the batch. And before I do that, I'm just going to make sure I could delete the group at this point. I could do other kinds of billings. I can delete one of these invoices. So I have a lot of opportunities here. I can even export to Excel. We've said that everything looks okay. So now we're going to process. So we use the little gears for the group post, and it'll give us options here. Make sure that that's the group we want to post. And if I hit process again, this group will be posted and it will be in the system. And it will now show on accounts receivable reports. That's it for AR shipment.
Want more Coda Bears Lunch and Learn? Check out our channel for more videos or contact us on our website for registration information.